I'll be honest with you, sometimes the worst moments in wrestling are also the best. I don't know why. I guess we're all suckers for punishment. WCW was proof of that throughout the year 2000 because my gosh, it's just hilarious. Why on earth did they do these things? So given that we are all here today, let's sit down and have a chat because I am Simon Miller, the Bald Idiot, and this is the 100 worst moments in wrestling history. At least for today. Number 100, the debut of Retribution. We will start here because it's a good guide for the rest of the entries. Nobody in Retribution is to blame. The idea was just totally directionless. It came to be due to the pandemic and WWE feeling like we had to keep doing things in order to make fans forget they weren't allowed to go to the show. There was also a lot of political chatter in 2020, so these renegades broke into the Performance Center and destroyed it with chainsaws. They even cut the ropes. They continued by spray painting the WWE logo onto furniture, which was weird, because I thought they were meant to be anti-establishment. We soon learned they had names like Slapjack and T-Bar. I can't tell you about. What was that based on? Eventually, Mustafa Ali got added, but by that point there was no momentum here at all. I mean, look how some of the groups are used today. If we had done that now with the talent involved, I'd tell you. Wouldn't have to look back in utter confusion. Still don't really know why they did what they did. Number 99, Dean Ambrose gets inoculated. So the Dean Ambrose heel turn was meant to be an all-timer. If anybody in the Shield had shown bad guy tendencies from day one, it was Dean, and given where he was at the time, it was a smart play. Let's freshen this dude up, move away from the lunacy into being angry. When WWE got it all wrong. For starters, they chose to have Ambrose turn on Seth Rollins the night of Roman Reigns announcing he had to go away for a while due to his cancer. I mean, what the hell were we thinking? It then went totally off the rails because rather than sell Dean as a threat, he started to tell the fans that they were dirty, and on one episode of Raw, got injected to be protected against their germs. That's right, he even said we smell. Oh no, whatever will I do? Eventually he was a full-on germaphobe, which doesn't even explain why he went bad guy. Surely he must have always felt that way. He could have just changed nothing and told us this was what he was like. I doubt anybody would have cared. You do you. Vince McMahon also scripted Ambrose to insinuate that Roman brought his diagnosis on himself, which is bottom-of-the-barrel stuff and totally embarrassing. You wanna know why Dean left? Bingo. It's also why when he reinvented himself at John Moxley, he showed us what he could do. It's been night and day ever since. Number 98, the misuse of a demon. I am still not over it, and again, maybe this one shouldn't be in here, but we're going to Extreme Rules 2021. Roman Reigns was facing the demon Finn Balor, which was dumb on paper, because neither of these guys had to lose when the top rope broke for some reason. That's right. Here we are 4 years later, and I still can't tell you why. It just happened to stop the coup de grace, meaning Reigns could win. It was so flipping lame. And none of this was their fault, of course. I'm sure they rolled their eyes too, and the body of the match is actually great. The tribal chief had gone full emotional manipulation by this point, whereas Finn's alter ego was beloved. I mean, it was really cool. We also went too far because after an Uso attack, which didn't bring about it any consequences, Balor used his magic powers to come back to life. When, yes, the ring destroyed itself. I mean, it had been fine a second earlier. If you do want to call this cowardice by WWE, I think you can. They booked this match based on its star power, but they had no desire to pay it off properly. That's the worst part of wrestling. Don't do it. Number 97, Jim Duggan squashes Steve Austin. This is more about how WCW saw Steve Austin, or how they didn't see the upside at all, so we have to get in deep. For you can see it again in TNA when we do get to 2010. Hulk Hogan arrived in the company and just brought in all of his friends. And that's fine because I don't want anyone to not have a job, but on this night, it was the Nasty Boys beating Bully Ray. And sure, Bully Ray wasn't the future either, but he should have gone over, as they say on this night. Instead, we acquiesced to Hogan. This happened years prior to back in WCW in 1994, because at Fall Brawl, which was a pay-per-view, Jim Duggan ruined Steve Austin in 39 seconds. And sure, this was way before he was Stone Cold, but let's not get the narrative wrong. Everyone worth a damn could see that Austin was great. WCW had gotten behind him, he would have been a huge star there too. Instead, Hulk had to work and Duggan ruined this guy. And look, I like Hacksaw, and his character remains endearing to this day, but it was not the correct move, and a huge reason Austin wanted to leave. He could see the writing on the wall, and it did not include him. Number 96, the barbed wire death match. So mistakes happen. You just have to shrug it off, which is what All Elite Wrestling did do, but still, you're gonna get the reaction. It's only fair to say that Kenny Omega versus John Moxley at Revolution 2021 is one hell of a good match. They kill each other with all the weapons, when yes, it was time for our big explosion as summed up in the name, as best friend Eddie Kingston came to save the life of Mox. Not quite. Because for whatever reason, instead of a huge display of pyrotechnics, we got sparklers. I'm only slightly exaggerating. Live fans booed it because it was so disappointing, and the reaction after the fact was fierce. I did think AEW playing up to it was for the best as a follow-up, but yeah, it was one of those moments that nobody wanted to be involved in. And think about poor Eddie Kingston. He just had to take an L. I mean, what was he so scared about? It was not fair. Number 98, Jen Maraska versus Charmel. I think it's kind of mean to include things like this because it's actually not on the talent. They were put in the worst position, so they did the best they could. If you don't train somebody properly, what can you possibly expect? The other issue is, if we don't talk about it, the comments will go off, but sure. Jen Maraska had found reality show fame, and as TNA enjoyed doing in 2009, they booked her for a match. Maybe we could get something out of her 15 minutes. This was against Charmel, and the first thing Jenna does is slaps. But I just need to tell you the truth here. I don't think these lacked any real power, and the rest just fell apart. This would happen to anybody, however. Do you think wrestling is easy? Of course it's not. It takes years of practice. It then really went off the rails and was the talk of the town for ages. I don't think Maresca had even been told how to bump properly. That is absurd, and the fault lies directly with the company. It never should have happened. Number 94, Bobby Lashley's sisters. Go and look what Bobby Lashley did after this in WWE or in AEW. That's what you do with a dude like this. Treat him like he could kill you if he chooses, and if he can be bothered. What's worse is that this is how WWE basically reintroduced Bobby to the show. It seemed normal at first because Lashley sat down with Mae Young to tell us about his life, and okay, he was close to his sisters. Makes sense? Good babyface line. Jump forward a week and then enemy Sami Zayn had hired 3 men to dress up as his female siblings. Honestly, this was painfully bad. The only interesting part is that one of those cast as an extra in this role was AEW's Max Caster. This was not 2003 either, it was 2018, so everybody knew what Lashley could do. It sucked so bad, and so did WWE. Number 93, Viagra on a pole. So you could put these ideas anywhere in this list, and there is going to be a lot of WCW, so let's just get into it. Because after Vince Russo had taken over Nitro and Thunder, he became actually obsessed with the idea of fixing any kind of an object to a pole. This was because he didn't like wrestling, even though he was a creative writer for wrestling, and in 2000 he went right to the bottom of the barrel, because we had a Viagra on a pole match between Billy Kidman and Shane Douglas. This all happened because Douglas had accused Kidman of not being able to get it up. Yes, I'm talking about his special area. It was all because Billy needed medical help to get an erection, so rather than go to town to buy some new ones, we put it on a pole, and whoever won would be able to do stuff with their wang, and then I guess go on to have some sex. If this seems totally silly, you are correct. And yes, by the end of the match, the pills sprayed everywhere. Tori Wilson, the mentioned partner, then grabbed Kidman by the back of his head and rubbed his face into these pills as the commentators acted like he was overdosing. If anybody ever tells you that World Championship Wrestling was good in this year, they're wrong. It was utter shite. Number 92, the Summerfest. I mean, a lot of the Raw guest host era was totally bad. It often served as a distraction to why you tuned in, because these people clearly didn't want to be there. And I get the idea, because in 2009 and 2010 WWE were desperate to get the casual fan back, but this wasn't it. If anything, it just made the hardcores go, maybe I'll walk away for a while. There were some superb moments, such as Bob Barker doing game show skits, but that was totally waylaid when Jeremy Piven turned up before SummerSlam, and yep, he called it the Summerfest. I'm not joking. He was also one of these individuals that may as well have had a sign that read, "I'm going to fire my agent," and it just overtook everything. Even the few highlights from this time are buried away due to this. It was such a silly idea. Why the hell would we need a weekly guest host? Number 91, the Dark Order arrive in AEW. The intentions were good. That does count for something. Sadly for those in AEW, they overestimated their fan base's independent knowledge, which ended with the Dark Order debuting to confusion. It was December 18th, 2019, meaning All Elite Wrestling had only just been born, when Evil Uno, Stu Grayson, and a bunch of their minions beat up the Elite Cody Rhodes and whoever else was in the ring. If we had teased that some terrifying entity was on the way, it would have been more effective, but instead they rushed the stage and left the audience baffled. What's happening? Who are these people? And yes, somebody then threw bad punches and the internet went off. It did nothing for their reputation, even more so as tribalism was already going nuts. It would lead Tony Khan to take over total creative control the next month. We were never gonna do this again. Number 90, Raw Underground. On paper, I got it. Raw is too long. Let's try and do something different with one of the hours. Once again, it was during 2020 when WWE needed ideas as the world had shut down, when Shane McMahon revealed Raw Underground. Or essentially a more gritty fight pit type of wrestling, which felt a little bit like MMA, I suppose. The issue was WWE never grows up, so their idea of edgy was dancing girls and hard-looking security dudes that for some reason were guarding a magical door to the playground. We also made sure the production cuts were so fast he started to feel sick, and the execution was way off. This didn't feel new, it felt like something a teenager from the 90s wanted while listening to break stuff. We really could have done something here had we given it more time to cook, but obviously it had to get to television as soon as possible. It was dead in a few months. Number 89, Oklahoma. What on earth was WCW thinking? This sucked on about 9 different levels. Actually impressive. It is of course direct evidence that Vince Russo didn't know what he was doing, and neither did co-writer and friend Ed Ferrara. For after they had settled in World Championship Wrestling, they turned Edward into Oklahoma, a parody of Jim Ross. Here comes my catchphrase again. I'm not kidding, this is what they did for TV ratings. It was horribly offensive too, as this character acted like they had Bell's palsy and put on an accent that was far from flattering. These buffoons even had Oklahoma win the Cruiserweight title, so do not act like they had the fans' best interests at heart. The audience loved that belt, and that had been turned into a joke. I tell you, they didn't care. Number 88, the 1st of August warning. I guess TNA meant well. Boy, howdy did they try. It was the oldest trick in the box too, because when you tell the audience a big surprise is coming, well, we usually fall for that and shall part with our hard-earned money. Sometimes it's great, to be fair, but sometimes it's this. August 1st, 2013, the company had told us a warning was coming, then it turned out to be UFC legend Tito Ortiz. The key word there is UFC or MMA. Wrestling fans did not give a damn. It came after the main event Mafia and the Aces and Eights had fallen out when Ortiz did storm to the ring, and he folded his arms. For hours, or it felt that way. To this day, I don't understand why he didn't attempt to do more. Mr. Anderson put his hands on his head to try and convey the oh no-ness, but that didn't work. If you go and watch this today, you will feel so awkward, the fans don't make a noise. Can't remember anything else that happened after this, I'll send you a prize. It was such a non-event, it was a mistake, and it was pretty dreadful. Number 87, Little People's Court. So it is back to Vince McMahon's warped sense of humor. It's the only reason this existed. 2009 was a weird time for WWE too, because they were trying to figure out what PG television meant, and eventually decided at least some of that should be taking shots at Hornswoggle. Poor guy. We literally did this on TV as well with the Back Once Again DX when Swogs took them to Little People's Court. We were told this was a real place that existed under the ring, like flippin' Narnia. Triple H and Shawn Michaels were clearly just trying to make themselves laugh too, and my gosh was this drawn out. It was just short joke after short joke, and if this was the first wrestling you'd ever seen, forget about it, you were done. Of course, the meta humor was winking and nodding at the long talked about wrestlers' court, but don't make television for hardcore niche fans. It loses the wider audience. Also, this wasn't very humorous. Number 86, the Reverse Battle Royal. Now, I did not want to put this in here. It's wonderful and I love it. Please, for the love of everything, can somebody do it again? It was, of course, TNA in 2006 at the Bound for Glory pay-per-view. And here are the rules. 16 wrestlers start outside the ring. The first 8 to get in there advance to an over-the-top battle royal. The final 2 meet in a one-on-one match. Talk about overbooked. It also didn't need to be this complicated. Just say the first wrestler to enter the squared circle is victorious, and then chaos ensues. NXT has done a better version of this, but the TNA one was so bad it has to get in here. Everybody had to run like they were stuck in treacle, and when someone had no one to brawl with, they were screwed. Why didn't they just go to the ring? Because they weren't planned to win. So it is totally dumb, but I will be a fan forever. Because I tell you, my friends, it makes me happy. Number 85, Roman Reigns eats dog food. Obviously, Roman Reigns himself was involved in this. The other main character is Baron Corbin, and do you want to know how they felt about it? Google is your friend. Short answer, they hated it. Of course they did. This is why we should always take a moment before criticizing the performers, as sometimes they're just doing what they were told. This was Vince McMahon's idea of entertainment. He was wrong. Roman also had to be tied to the ring post during this too, and good grief. Corbin invited a man dressed as a dog to the ring and made jokes a kid wouldn't laugh at. I cannot believe this is what we chose to do. It's why 2019 is often cited as one of the worst years for WWE, because it was so lame. There's that word again. Nobody cared about it either. It was utterly emotionless. It's also one of the huge reasons why Reigns demanded a change post-pandemic too. He knew, man, because of course he did. He's a walking human being. Number 84, Mojo Rawley looks in the mirror. And let us prove this all with another piece of evidence. This is what we asked Mojo Rawley to do. It was 2019 again, and I suppose we decided he needed a new character. After what must have been a 1-minute meeting, we came up with this. Now I can see why the main roster creative team wanted to switch things up too, because while Rawley's Get Hyped, Stay Hyped act was fun at NXT, maybe he needed something more on Raw and SmackDown. The answer, however, was to have Mojo scream at himself while looking in the mirror, and then he put some blue paint on his face. I'd love for this entry to go on, but I have nothing more to tell you. Neither did WWE, and this would drop so fast when Mojo Rawley got released through no fault of his own. The hell were we thinking, man? Blue-face mirror man? I could come up with that in my sleep. Number 83, the anonymous Raw GM. So for those that don't know, for way too long in 2010, the Raw general manager was a laptop computer. Yep, they would email in things they wanted to see happen as the show was going on. It was awful. Poor Michael Cole had to read all of these out. What was the idea here? Of course, this mystery person ruined the lives of the babyfaces, but it was the noise that preceded every one of these messages. It went on for a full 12 months, and soon you learned to hate it. Aside from just acting totally unhinged and ruining stories, Vince McMahon had no endgame to this. That's right, we didn't work backwards, meaning when it was time to do the reveal, someone went, haha, it's me. We just went, fine, Hornswoggle can do it. That's right, it was all for a joke, and a bad one at that. Number 82, Beaver Cleavage. This one should be higher, but at the same time I want to make it clear we're definitely going back into the past. Imagine we did this today. It was late 1999 and the Headbangers were broken up for no reason when WWE decided what they needed to save their show was a Leave It to Beaver parody. That's right, the program from the 70s. Just doing that wasn't enough, however, so Thrasher was transformed into this guy who was desperate to suck on the breast of his mother despite being a grown adult. Clearly, I am not sugarcoating things today. During one of these vignettes, he even said he needed milk for his dry cereal. I'd like you to think about that for 1 second. Who was this for? And if you have just said, well, for me, please stop watching right now and go and get some help. Number 81, Ric Flair gets beaten in the desert. This one could be way higher too, but let's get back into some bad WCW. It was the February 15th, 1999 Nitro, which is known today as a gloriously bad show all round, especially because Eric Bischoff was now Ric Flair's butler and chauffeur. Just go with it. Somehow Flair didn't notice he was being driven out to the desert. I guess he doesn't look out of the window. And when they arrived, the NWO beat the crap out of Rick for around about 5.2 hours. I mean, this was ridiculous. Bischoff also acts so over the top the whole time, Stevie Wonder would have seen this coming, and we were left thinking that the Nature Boy was dead. The real kicker is that Flair was the most popular aspect of WCW, and this regime just put him in bad situation after bad situation, this one being right up there. There was no payoff either, although saying that in WCW there really was. Eventually Rick was just back, doing something else stupid. Number 80, It Is Not Hot. Another one that could be in the top 10, but we're on a WCW roll now. The Dungeon of Doom. They were feuding with Hulk Hogan after his jump across to WCW because, as they put it, they needed to end Hulkamania. None of this was played seriously though, because in what is now an infamous skit, Hogan quite literally entered a dungeon which looks like I built it. I mean, what is this set? Hulk still feels the need to be terrified and therefore reaches out to touch some water before proclaiming, it's not hot. No, Hogan, it's water from a fountain. Why would it be hot? And if you thought it was, why did you touch it? The triple-decker cage that followed all of this too is honestly dreadful. You should probably watch that because you won't believe it. Thank goodness for the NWO a year later. Number 79, Hawk's Fall. We should never really tie in a wrestler's personal issue to a story. Think how hard it is to process that stuff in real life. Now you got it at work too. The WWF as it was in the late 90s ignored all that when it came to the late Michael Hegstrand, better known to us as Hawk. He was going through some serious substance problems when it became a part of the TV. Apparently seeing longtime tag partner Animal team with Droz was too much for Hawk, so in a right state he climbed a Titantron. It was Droz who tried to stop this when Hawk was shown in silhouette form falling from a great height, and the cliffhanger was if this was an accident or whether it was deliberate. That is just terrible. Don't forget either, Vince Russo wanted you to think that maybe the Hawk character had died. Let's just draw a line under it and call it very bad taste. Number 78, the end of an era. WrestleMania 7 at the top end was bad. The WWF had decided the Iraq War was a good setting for their stories, turned Sergeant Slaughter heel, and had him sympathize with the cruelty that was actually happening. It's no wonder they had to go from a stadium to an indoor arena in LA. Nobody was interested in this. The irony is the Rockers versus Hardcore and Barbarian and the Hart Foundation versus the Nasty Boys are actually very good for their time, and Randy Savage even got a decent match out of the Ultimate Warrior. The main event was so awful though, it overshadowed the whole thing, and really when Hogan had won and was waving the flag, you could feel it. Whatever era he had pushed forward was coming to an end. This just was not it. Hulk had always been a cartoon, and I mean that as a compliment, so to switch gears and base a story on something so real and horrific, yeah, there was a shift here, and we never really went back to the red and yellow golden days. Number 77, Abyss's Hulkamania powers. I still find it amazing this was a thing, and we did it with Abyss of all people. So when Hulk Hogan arrived in TNA, he didn't help anything. A lot of the things he tried to experiment with made it worse. I mean, he most definitely ignored the whole don't make TNA WWE light, because as soon as he could, he just leaned in harder and harder. Still, Hogan, I suppose, tried to get people over in 2010 when he picked Abyss. He was going to be our guy, and in order to ensure he did make it, Hulk gave him his Hall of Fame ring and basically said it had magical powers. This is all very real. It taught Abyss how to Hulk up. Now, it is a shame that Hulk Hogan was involved, as this could be hilarious looking back. But no, it's just bad. Abyss also deserves all the credit for being so loyal to TNA. He was not treated right at all. Number 6, WWE and Sting. I will admit I'm just glad Sting got his moment in WWE. The debut was awesome, that time he was hidden under a box on Raw was fun. Just how the company booked him. I suppose we're mostly talking about WrestleMania 31 here, because once again, what are we doing? Triple H versus Sting was definitely a worthy WrestleMania match, but why on earth did it become WCW versus WWE almost 15 years after that battle had died? Vince McMahon was still so obsessed with getting the message out there that he was superior, he had Sting lose as well. Believe you me, nobody wanted that. WCW fans were also aghast that the NWO came to help the Stinger, given the story in 1997 was the exact opposite, and the handshake after the fact. Sting had been whacked in the head with a sledgehammer. Ah well, let's be friends. There is of course a certain element of fun here, the pop for the New World Order and DX is entertaining, but we did not do right by Sting, man. He should have been treated like the end-of-level boss. Number 75, Shorty G. I said it then and I'll say it now. Shorty G still sounds like the name of a biscuit, or a cookie for my American friends. It seems so ridiculous now given where WWE is, but yeah, Vince McMahon was so fixated on Chad Gable's height, he made it his gimmick. Forget the fact he was taller than other people he interacted with on the roster, he was Shorty Gable. Chad had to talk about overcoming adversity too, as if not being 6 foot ruined somebody's life, and the way he had to dress. Think about the Gable we know today and the machine he is. Here he looks like a cartoon. So this was just indicative of the stupid ideas WWE was drowning in 2019. That year is gonna come up a lot. Number 74, Uzi Hot. Yep, here we go, 2019. This one is also similar because it involves the now FTR and the Usos. Think about where they are today, and all those years ago we had them doing comedy. And that is actually fine. Funny is good in wrestling as it has to be a variety show, but when it falls this flat, sheesh, it was basically a dick joke. But yes, as they feuded, Jimmy and Jay snuck into the locker room and rubbed Uzi Hot into Dash and Dawson's underwear. I suppose it was meant to be like Deep Heat. Of course, later on when they were going to have a promo off, the Revival as they were then known, started hopping around as if their groins were on fire. Okay, now all due respect to those guys, did they commit to this? They made it work on some level just because if this was the plan, they weren't half-arsing it. It's not something we should ever talk about again though, because it did nothing for nobody. Once again was just there to make an old man laugh. Number 73, Suffering Succotash. Poor old Roman Reigns. Nobody could have made this work. We're just so out of touch. The whole big dog experiment has been well documented now because Vince McMahon wouldn't let it go. Forget the fact the Tribal Chief character was ready to cook post Roman Reigns' Undertaker win at Mania 33. He wanted this version over, even though fans universally rejected it. It was the verbiage that made this so bizarre because even kids could see through this. Roman going off on the mic saying the word Suffering Succotash like he was Bugs Bunny. In fact, here's the whole quote just to get you a better idea. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, I'm not sorry. But look at you. You're just so full of yourself now. Actually, you're full of something else. You are a sniveling little suck-up sellout fool of Suffering Succotash, son. Yeah. I know. That was not easy to say. No wonder people cheered Seth Rollins. Number 72, Bayley won't use violence. I still do not get what we thought was going to happen here. was 2017, fans had long accepted that the babyface can be a badass. Bayley didn't get that treatment. It was during her feud with Alexa Bliss, who was just ruining Bales because she was nothing more than a loser fan. That led to Bayley challenging Bliss to a kendo stick on a pole match at Extreme Rules, when Bayley decided, no, I'm a hero to these kids. I must stick to the laws of the game. Well, that didn't make sense because WWE had just shifted those, saying you can use weapons, and Bayley just didn't. It made her look dumb, especially because Alexa Bliss didn't care. She indulged, and she won naturally. Really, this ties into Bayley's overall call-up to the main roster, because down in NXT, she had been a hero of kids, and Vince McMahon basically made her one big kid. I don't want to take a guess here. I don't think he understood the gimmick at all. Number 71, Dixie Carter's weird speech. Vince Russo was an issue when he booked TNA. Even if you did like his brand of sports entertainment, it is not what this new promotion needed. It had to feel fresh and stand out. Apparently, owner Dixie Carter didn't see it that way, and for reasons we will never understand, she went out and talked about all this live on Impact. Why? She also turned her attention to the TNA roster, and come on. This was filled with future stars, but no. Dixie felt like they were questioning her leadership, and that cannot happen. Therefore, Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff will be joining us. I do not know. Carter even said, I'm asking you all to step up your game, and AJ Styles must have fallen off his chair. The dude was changing the industry, and TNA still wouldn't make him their major star. In hindsight, this was a huge error. Number 70, Scott Hall's issues. So this is the same as Hawk, who we talked about earlier, only now we have to discuss it in regards to WCW. They decided having Scott Hall be an alcoholic on TV was a good idea. It wasn't. There were many reports in 1998 that he was turning up to work in no condition to perform, so eventually, apparently, we just told Scott to do this on TV. Not sure what else to say about it. Hall clearly wasn't comfortable, and the fact he had serious problems at home due to this made it worse. There was no beginning, middle, or end either. It just started and stopped trying to grab a rating. That kind of stuff really needs to be left in the past. Number 69, Sting versus Jeff Hardy. It's still amazing we got this in any guise, because Sting versus Jeff Hardy at TNA Victory 2011 was just super sad to watch. The short story is that Jeff had arrived at the building not in the right state of mind, and yet for some reason we moved forward with this anyway. It wasn't until Sting and Hardy were in the ring when Eric Bischoff realized this can't happen, so walked out to stop it. He told Jeff, Sting, and the referee that the latter was going to roll the former up, no questions asked. Sting took no chances and did this for real, and as the fans started to boo, he agreed. He was super professional, and this was BS. It is just everything you don't want in wrestling, even more so because people were in danger here. If that is the case, don't let them grapple. Number 68, Rosie O'Donnell versus Donald Trump. I mean, for goodness sake, we watch wrestling to be distracted, not have nonsense like this thrown into our face. It was 2007 on Raw, and of course this wasn't the real people. It was impersonators, and Vince McMahon only booked it because Rosie and Donald publicly sparred all the time. So why don't we do it in the ring? Because it's shit. That's why. It was all very mean-spirited, especially the portrayal of O'Donnell, and no fan tuned in for this. It's like a maniac taking over his own show. It got so bad the audience started a TNA chant, which of course in later years would turn into CM Punk. Do you think anybody learned from this too? Nope. Just did it over and over again. Number 67, The Undertaker tests The Big Show. So this one was so bizarre, me and my old wrestling friends still joke about it today. The night The Undertaker cut the longest promo in history and said a grand total of nothing. It was some story about Taker and The Big Show having an adventure in the desert to see if they could survive. The Giant was keen to point out he was ready to eat human flesh if it came to it. I was like, what the hell is happening? They then talked a lot about motorbikes too. It was also the time when Chris Jericho interrupted for only his second WWF appearance, and I think he hit a nerve. He said how boring this all was, and after the wider reaction, I do not think the dead man was pleased. The Phenom also said he didn't sleep during this. Like, that's cool. That's just silly, man. You will definitely die. I would say watch this because it is unintentionally hilarious, but don't. It'll take half a day at least. Number 66, Triple H beats Booker T. It's just all backwards, and that build, ugh, not good. To keep it on point as possible, Ric Flair and Triple H did lean into racial undertones when cutting promos on Booker T. As is only fair, Booker has talked about this and said he was fine with it. That doesn't mean it made for comfortable viewing. I think wrestling should always be an escape unless you're going to get the more serious storylines pitch perfect. This wasn't that. What really dragged it down, though, is that the bullies didn't get theirs. Any story can be justified if the bad guys lose, but at WrestleMania 19, Triple H hit Booker T with the pedigree and took about 4 years to cover him. There was then the realization that Booker T hadn't won at WrestleMania, the home of babyface wins, meaning he had been torn apart verbally and now physically too. I mean, imagine if all WrestleMania matches were done this way. It would be the most depressing event ever. This was not it. Number 65, Gary the Goat Garbutt. Cedric Alexander talked about this on Chris Van Vliet's Insight show recently, and yeah, I don't think he gets it either. I suppose we'll just tell the story, as trying to dive deeper is impossible. It was the dreaded 2019 where everything was going wrong, so Drew McIntyre and Shane McMahon forced Roman Reigns to team with the janitor who worked at the building. Sure, that's perfectly allowed. His name was Gary Garbutt, but when the bell rung, it wasn't Gary Garbutt. It was Cedric Alexander, who is a great wrestler, and he started flipping around the place. The heels couldn't believe it. He still lost, but when he unmasked, he smiled at Roman like, surprise! But again, he lost. What are you happy about? Also, why was Alexander pretending to be the cleaner, or had he taken the real Gary out and stolen his place? Honestly can't tell you because none of this made sense. WWE is most definitely better now. I do not care. Number 64, the death of Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero's tragic passing in 2005 is one of the saddest events to ever transpire in wrestling. You can still see the pouring of love. It was heartbreaking. It's why when it was weaved into WWE storylines, there was a large part of the fan base that wasn't into this because, yeah, it didn't feel right. Rey Mysterio in later years has gone on record saying he thinks Eddie would have gotten a kick out of it, but most still feel like this went too far. Randy Orton, for example, who was forced into talking about which direction Guerrero could have gone. Even Randy said after that he didn't want to say it. I think it was also difficult because while Mysterio winning the Rumble and WWE title at Mania 22 was awesome, Vince McMahon sort of forgot about all this soon after, and he didn't book Rey well at all. He felt like a paper champion, and that then left a sour taste in the mouth. At least keep the man at the top of the card. It comes down to the age-old question of what we should and shouldn't do. I suppose it just felt like this was too difficult to then tie into the entertainment aspect of wrestling. Maybe we shouldn't have done it. Number 63, Vince McMahon loves cock. The coming together of D-Generation X in 2006 was interesting. I think Triple H and Shawn Michaels were just trying to have fun, but the output was totally different to what they were doing in 1997. As they feuded with Vince McMahon, they also decided to make cock jokes. It would all be done via innuendo in front of Vince, who sold it as if this would never be true, because he wasn't gay. Yeah, let's not do that, gay, straight, bisexual, whatever. Just let people live their lives. The worst one is when they argued about cocks, as Triple H said McMahon hated cocks, whereas Vince McMahon assured him no, he absolutely loves cock. As I shall say a lot during this, we wouldn't be doing this on TV now, and there is absolutely a reason. Number 62, Dr. Heine. And as we are back at Vince's weird sense of humor, Dr. Heine. This is another entry where all I can really do is explain it to you, and we can get confused together. It was after Jim Ross had gone through a very real colonoscopy in 2005, and apparently this was hilarious to McMahon. On Raw, he dressed up like a surgeon and performed a mock skit operating on JR. There was a busty blonde nurse and gurgling toilet noises. Wrestling. We also pulled objects like an American football from his anus, and it was just so mean. It only existed to take shots at Ross, whom most fans beloved. He was really good at his job. It also wasn't tied into any story. Vince McMahon just wanted to do it because he had the power. So bingo, there you go. It was awful. Number 61, the Lana and Bobby Lashley wedding. So we are rocking and rolling now. It's back to how weird Vince McMahon is. For starters, it was another bad moment for Lashley, who started an affair with Rusev's wife Lana. Yep, this was 2019 as well. The terrible year. I suppose this was designed to be an over-the-top soap opera, but the results were dismal. The wedding was the real open-mouthed moment because after numerous ex-lovers walked down the aisle to explain why these two can't be wed, Liv Morgan turned up. She had a pretty decent reason, I suppose. Lana and her were in love with each other. Or she was a lesbian. Yep, that's what we hit on over and over again, like this was some shocking revelation in 1946. Think about what we are doing with Liv now and compare it to this too. Rusev and Bobby are also top performers, and Lana was great in her role when she didn't have to do this. It really was out-of-the-world nonsense. Likely again written for one man. Number 60, Kofi Kingston's WWE title loss. 8 seconds, my friends. 8. I will never get over it. It's such a shame because Kofi Kingston's WrestleMania 35 victory for the WWE title is all-time stuff. Him and Daniel Bryan had a great match too, and seeing Kingston get his moment, we've talked about it, that's the point of the show of shows. From there, Vince McMahon did a Rey Mysterio and booked him terribly, and that's because he was just biding his time. Come the debut of SmackDown on Fox in 2019, there you go again, it was Kofi versus Brock Lesnar for the championship. The bell rung, Kingston ran at Brock, F5, 1, 2, 3. Why on earth they couldn't have had a proper fight, I do not know, because these were always Lesnar's best matches, versus the smaller guys. Instead, we just threw it away for no reason. It still annoys me. I'm gonna do it again. Utterly shit. Number 59, The Big Show is a baby. Poor Paul White. I don't know whether WWE was just punishing him from time to time, but they really did put him in some ridiculous situations. I think when Vince McMahon saw he could do comedy, he just became obsessed with that, and therefore at the end of 2013, as the new year beckoned, The Big Show quite literally dressed up as a New Year baby, and he danced around. That is it too, by the way. This wasn't done for any purpose, other than to entertain anyone who is totally screwed up. It was basically a mini advert, and Show also squeezed milk onto a production assistant's face. It's the worst thing I'll ever say. If anybody does have info, do not contact me. Just bizarre. Number 58, David Arquette, WCW champion. So David Arquette is really good when he talks about this, having a fun time with it, and that's why I've moved it up the list. He somehow makes it quite entertaining. Because even he was telling WCW in the year 2000 that making him the world champion was the dumbest thing ever. Vince Russo didn't care. This is what the non-wrestling fan wanted to see. He was wrong. Arquette was originally brought in to promote the In Conjunction with WCW movie Ready to Rumble, and man, you should go and watch that. It may as well be called Wrestling is for Nerds. I will never get over why a film based on sports entertainment is so fast to laugh at it. None of this, by the way, happened on pay-per-view either. It was WCW Thunder. A tag match between DDP and Arquette versus Eric Bischoff and Jeff Jarrett had the stipulation that whoever got the visual pin would become the man. Yep, David got this, and Diamond Dallas Page, who was the champion, just laughed. To be fair, it was the right call, don't sell it. It really was another shot in the dying days of WCW, because their poor hardcore audience felt totally ignored. That's because they were. Again, Arquette is great with all this, and sent the money earned from it to wrestling families who had suffered great loss, so more power to that guy. If you do need an updated comparison, I suppose it would be like Travis Scott winning the WWE title at WrestleMania 41. That guy couldn't even walk down to the ring without some people going out of their minds. WCW 100% would have done it. Number 57, The Nightmare Collective. I tend to want to give AEW a break in their early years because when you are brand new, you have to try things. Go and look at the reaction to The Nightmare Collective though. People did not like this. It was great that Awesome Kong was back and Brandy Rhodes had left WWE with husband Cody, so sure, she deserved her shot too. Eventually they added Mel, who was happy to shave her head after Brandy and Kong had been cutting off the hair of their opponents. Luther also joined in, I think mostly because he was able to look scary. It was just a hit and a miss in terms of the feeling they were going for, and really it was too WWE. I hate saying that, but so early in AEW's run, people wanted everything to be non-sports entertainment. This was the opposite. It didn't last long, which I still think is a credit to the creative team, but yeah, it's not good. It didn't work. Number 56, The Yeti. This is where we have to say this list is just in a random order because The Yeti sucked. I mean, look at this image. What the hell are we doing? It was October 1995 when WCW was still totally baffled as to who they wanted to be, so they debuted this guy. And I know, that's a mummy, right? I agree, but WCW called him The Yeti. There's literally no fur. For some reason, Tony Schiavone confused this more by calling him the Yeti, like he was about to drop a DJ set. This thing also interfered in a world title match between Hulk Hogan and the Giant when the two bad guys trapped Hogan in a bear hug. I can't lie, it just looks like one big cuddle. Never forget, this is what World Championship Wrestling thought was going to turn the business around too. It kind of does make me laugh. It's just totally wild. Number 55, The Cursed NXT Referee. So I don't know about this one. Obviously all these lists are put together by numerous folk, and hey, if NXT wants to have a referee that's been possessed, why not? Maybe because it was a little bit too WCW. It was 2022, however, as Isla Dawn and Alba Fire clashed at Deadline. Fire lost, but she did have the match won when the referee threw up black goo because Dawn had used her magic powers. I mean, why not? Of course, the logic issue was Isla Dawn didn't use this in every match afterwards. And yeah, you should do that. It worked. My argument is that we see so many fights end in a disqualification or a no contest. I would rather some creativity, and this was actually hilarious. If you're not into the lighter side of wrestling though, yeah, people were not pleased. Number 54, the new Monday Night War. So this has come up already, but the one thing TNA didn't want to be was WWE Light. It was the pathway to the end, so that's what they did. To be fair, it was Hogan and Bischoff who pushed for this and got Impact onto Monday nights to go head-to-head with Raw. This wasn't 1996, however. It was never going to work. I'm stupid, and even I knew that. It was 2010, though, and the first match turned off so many people. The X Division guys were doing their thing, but the cage was so red nobody could see, the fans chanted BS. The main event was also based around Ric Flair, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman, and while clearly those guys are legends, it just felt like a retread. If you did tune in to recapture that love of wrestling, you were put right back where you were a few years earlier. AJ Styles should have been there. It didn't last long, and soon TNA moved around to a different day. This was such a bad step. Number 53, The Big Show gets the yes chant. WWE sometimes can be totally transparent even if they don't realize it. We all know the B-plus player story for Daniel Bryan was based in reality. Vince McMahon didn't think a dude this small could be the guy, so let's try and do everything we can to stop this swell of support. Nope, not happening, we had decided. The last-ditch attempt, however, was hilarious because poor Big Show was actually told, you gotta start now doing the yes chant. That's what we believe to be truly over, and if we can get the audience doing it with the Giant, they'll all forget about Bryan. I'm sorry to tell you, you're wrong again. So he was literally told to act like it was his taunt, which wound the crowd up even more, so they doubled their noise whenever Daniel was here. There are worse things to happen throughout wrestling history, sure, but just the sheer disdain for the audience, you gotta mention it. Don't try this manipulative nonsense. Number 52, The Kennel from Hell. This is going to sound weird, but as insane as it was, the Big Boss Man and Al Snow actually made their story about eating Al's dog Pepper moderately entertaining. I mean, they were just so over the top with it, you couldn't take it seriously, and therefore there was something to it. I believe they made lemonade out of lemons. Sadly, not even they could avoid the truly bad decisions that were coming their way, because given that they were feuding over a dog, they were put in a Kennel from Hell match, or a Hell in a Cell with a bunch of dogs around the place. Right. Now the pups didn't know they were just meant to be aggressive, so spent the whole time pooping and trying to have sex with each other. We could leave it there, really. It was just coming up with what I suppose is a funny idea, and then trying to make it work, but no. Bastardizing the super cage stipulation was only going to wear it down, and that's exactly what happened. We never did this again. Number 51, The Undertaker kills the Boss Man. I like talking about the real-life Ray Traylor because he was awesome. A truly underrated and underappreciated big man. It's why I'm sure The Undertaker was happy to work with him at WrestleMania 15. It would be a night off. Sort of. The match itself is fine too, although it does lack some oomph, mostly because once again we had gone back to the Hell in a Cell. WWE just ran it into the ground because it looked so impressive, we can sell tickets. What nobody was expecting was the end, because the Phenom with his Ministry of Darkness strung Bossman up and hanged him. That's not some sort of riddle either. They tied a rope around his neck and waited till he stopped breathing. The visual was horrendous. This was way too far. Magically, he turned up on Raw too, which made it even more farcical. Do not need to murder people in wrestling this way. And actually, TNA has got that stuff right. Make it so crazy you sort of laugh. This was not that. My gosh, it was dark, dark stuff. Number 50, Nikki Bella hates her sister. April 2014, we finally decided to do Nikki Bella versus Brie Bella, and my gosh. It all began when Daniel Bryan, Kane, and Stephanie McMahon were feuding, so Brie was added because she was the partner of Daniel in real life. She was then fired as Stephanie punished Nikki too with a series of handicap matches. Oh no, you must do your job. We finally got to SummerSlam where it was Brie versus Steph, and yep, Nikki turned on her sister out of jealousy. I don't really know where that came from. We weren't particularly told. She was just a better treated sibling or something. Nikki had also decided she was considered the bad twin, whereas the good twin was Brie. So yes, she actually said, as far as I'm concerned, I have no sister. I wish you died in the womb. Now the line was somehow funny given the delivery, but it's the story, man. It was only done for something to do, and at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, the stipulation was the loser would have to become the other person's personal assistant. You get it. Number 49, New York rules Thunder. So what does that even mean? Good question. It was back in WCW as the New Blood versus the Millionaires Club story played out, which prompted Vince Russo to make an episode of Thunder that was under New York rules. As opposed to people shouting, "Hey, I'm walking here," at each other, it just meant that matches didn't need referees. That was it. It is painfully funny because not one wrestler who was now in charge of their own pins counted fast, because damn it, these made-up laws must be treated with respect. The art of stupidity was great. The first contest we were told was not a tables match, but the second match was, and then we had another one, which was also a tables match. Please do not try to understand that, because we literally got told ignore the tables, now please pay attention to the tables. Do you want to know how Ric Flair defeated Billy Kidman too? Kevin Nash powerbombed Mike Awesome. Again, let it float. There is no logic to be had. WCW had just gone off the rails. Number 48, the Doomsday Cage Match. We mentioned this earlier, and yes, it is that WCW triple-decker cage match. It's also terrible. That's why it was made to look so massive, because everybody involved knew they had to paper over the cracks. For some reason as well, it was Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage against 8 other people. And who signed that off? It's totally unfair. This was actually at the Uncensored pay-per-view in 1996 too, which is not old enough to be doing stuff like this, although there was a serious edge. One of the heels was called The Final Solution. As a Jewish man, that still gets to me. It is unforgivable, and WCW soon changed the name to The Ultimate Solution. Too little too late. Somehow Hogan beats Flair with a frying pan too, but this was all done so Hulk could look like a monster as he went through 8 pay-per-view cycles in one night. Tell you, it must be nice to have creative control. Number 47, the Beach Blast mini-movie. Now, obviously this is fantastic and we need more of this in wrestling. Just the goofiest stuff imaginable. This is just my weird brain though, because yeah, where did it come from? Jim Crockett Promotions were one of the few companies that were happy to battle Vince McMahon in the 80s, and that was mostly because they were good. JCP delivered on what its fans wanted. So what happened when WCW essentially took it over? They did the exact opposite. Which brings us to 1993. Because to get us hyped for Beach Blast, Sting and the British Bulldog went to some island to play on the sand with some kids. I mean, before a big match, why not build a sandcastle or something? Sadly for them, Sid and Vader had been watching, so invaded this beach on a boat as a little person tried to blow up the babyface's ship. This is what happened, by the way, I'm not exaggerating. The heels then offered a plane ticket to Sting and Bulldog so they could fly away as far as possible, when they both shouted, "Nah, we'll see you at Beach Blast." The children around them then erupt, and Sting's green bathing shorts are a sight to behold. I can't actually believe this was made, but thank goodness it was. Number 46, the Higher Power. This is actually one of my favorite moments of all time, because it's hilarious. In late 1999 though, the Corporation and the Ministry of Darkness had joined forces. The reason was literally because they were both the big bad guy groups. That also meant there was some secret higher power bringing them all together, and the WWF teased this so hard. You gotta see who this guy is, you won't believe it. Tune in. Super indie talent Christopher Daniels was considered, but McMahon felt like he was too small, and Shawn Michaels' name was doing the rounds too. He had been away for a while, why not? Of course it wasn't the Heartbreak Kid, and instead it was Vince McMahon. It was me, Austin. It was me all along. I suppose it would have been fine had McMahon not have been a huge babyface at the time, trying to protect his family from the Ministry of Darkness. That's right, The Undertaker had kidnapped his daughter, and even though Vince cried and fought this, it turned out he was the one pulling the strings. So it was 2 + 2 = potato, and we chose Vince because we couldn't think of anything else. It was really stupid. Number 45, Brawl Out. So it's another one that I hesitate to stand with totally just because of the noise afterwards. It was oddly fun to be a fan, even though it most definitely wasn't nice what the real people were going through. It was like watching breaking news in real time. This was, of course, the All Out 2022 press conference when CM Punk decided to air his grievances. Now, this isn't about what was said or what wasn't said. We do not know the issues that may have been going on behind the scenes. You never want to air it publicly, though, because of the effects afterwards. I mean, no matter what side of the fence you chose, or do choose, this one hurt AEW. Fans of Punk felt like they didn't want to watch anymore, and no matter what happened on Dynamite, all people did was discuss this. It was like a black cloud we couldn't shake. I will say maybe as a troupe this has been included here because we want balance to this list, but ultimately WWE has been around for longer, so they're going to have more entries. It's the rule of numbers. Even then, though, things would have been way better for All Elite Wrestling had this not existed. I mean, I am recording this in the summer of 2025, and people still bring it up. I don't think that's great. Number 44, heel Dixie Carter. Because wrestling just cannot help itself. Do you have an authority figure? Eventually, we will make them evil. It sort of tied into Claire Lynch was around the same time, and yes, we're gonna get there. And AJ Styles was involved too. He went up to Dixie and said, I don't like all these wrestlers that you've cut. They're my friends. And what's worse, all you do is bring up washed up hacks and MMA guys. Now, of course, Dixie didn't want to hear this because, and you're gonna love it, AJ Styles was just an average fish in any pond. That's right, AJ Styles, average. So we're here again. Don't tell me wrestling used to have more realistic stories. Carter's big plan was then to join forces with Hulk Hogan so he could ride the Dixie train. Don't get mad at me, I am just recounting. Hulk decided he would leave forever instead, which is such an over-exaggeration. And what did Carter do? Grab onto his leg in order to make him stay. I think we should just leave it there because it does get worse and worse. Eventually, world champion AJ Styles vanished for a month or so, because why let the fans see somebody they liked? Number 43, Bayley, this is your life. So this was part of the Alexa Bliss feud, and once again proved Vince McMahon didn't understand the Bayley character. He seemed totally confused that a female could be the new John Cena, even though Bales had those vibes. And now I'm repeating myself, but I do think he saw her as a literal child, because of course he did. Therefore, he went into his old bag of tricks and reran a This Is Your Life episode as we rolled out people from Bayley's past. It was so poorly executed, though, that even Alexa Bliss at some points looks like she's feeling sorry for the individuals, and the hint at Bayley's dead. My gosh, it's just disgusting. It was also meant to be funny, and it was not funny, and it likely did hurt Bayley a bit, even though she had no choice. Just watch it if you don't believe me, though that is a waste of your time. Off the rails. Number 42, the fake death of Vince McMahon. Once again, it's an entry that is bigger than the sum of its parts. As bad as Vince McMahon having a storyline murder and subsequent funeral would have been, it was sadly par for the course. Back then, you kind of just shrugged and got on with it. The reason this was just horrific, though, was the timing. It was 2007, and as ever, we were searching for better numbers, and therefore Vince decided death was a good answer. He walked backstage, got mad at Paul London for laughing, got in his car, and boom, a whodunit began. It did not last any time at all, however, because in that same week, the Benoit family tragedies came to light. It's without doubt one of the worst events in wrestling history, and seeing Vince magically back on TV to explain all this was just awful. You won't be surprised to hear that many people took a break from wrestling after this. And that is mostly because what we've already chatted about, and that is the fact that sports entertainment is meant to be a distraction from life. This really was the most horrific crossover. Number 41, the Brawl for All. Mostly due to the concept itself. It was pitched as real fighting, and therefore told the audience that if it isn't the Brawl for All, it's fake. So it was the then WWF insulting themselves. It's also a mess because the whole point of the tournament was to get Steve Williams ready for a program with Steve Austin. Alright, well in that case just book that story. You have the power. Instead we put him in a proper scrap and he got knocked out by Bart Gunn. His push was over. In an even dumber move, Bart then went on to win the thing, so what did we do? Punished him. That's right. Even though we could have tried to have made him a star, Gunn had to face Butterbean at WrestleMania 14, and of course he got wrecked. He was not a professional boxer. This was everything wrong with the Attitude Era. Number 40, AEW scales don't work. So this one is way too high, but sure, I get it. We've got to keep that balance again. It also wasn't good. It sounds ridiculous to say, but really the major issue here was that the scales didn't work. The story idea between Anthony Ogogo and Cody Rhodes in hindsight was not the best, but the excruciating part is how long it takes Paul White to get some weight. Now I get that inanimate objects don't understand their inner show, but wrestling is a work. We know this. So if all of a sudden you can't get a proper reading, just make up a number. It can be anything, nobody cares, and even if they do, it would not have hit as hard as this. It honestly went on forever. I think in some alternate realities it still is. I would guess this one gets highlighted because of how it also affected Cody down the line. Little issues like this soon saw the fans turn on the American Nightmare, but hey, it did work out. He is currently the biggest babyface in the industry, so it's inspiring really. Can turn it around. Number 39, Seven. This one was totally mismanaged, the arrival of Seven in WCW. It was played by Dustin Rhodes, he of Goldust fame, who had returned to the competition in 1999. I suppose somebody thought they needed a version of The Undertaker, so some dude called Seven wore a black hat and a trench coat. You do need to go and watch the vignette that debuted all of this though, because yeah, a child is woken up as a deep voice says, "Awake my son, what's under your bed?" Alright. Seven then appears out the window as he says, "Come to me and live forever. Join me in complete bliss." Ugh. That's right. The is in there too, by the way. We then zoom in on the child's eyes, which are black, as the mysterious figure floats away. Now, this did get to TV because Seven glides to the ring, but as soon as the Turner higher-up saw it, it was all thrown away. You can kind of understand why when you do see it, it really was not the best idea. Number 37, Bark Like a Dog. So this one is hard to talk about today because good grief, it's bad. Now, it's only fair to say that Trish Stratus has also talked about it on the Vince McMahon Netflix documentary. She doesn't seem too bothered by it at all. My question to you, dear watcher, though, is would you show this to a friend or a loved one who had never seen wrestling before? No, you wouldn't. The payoff worked because Vince McMahon was so awful as he made out with Trish in front of his comatose wife that when Linda rose from her wheelchair at WrestleMania 17, the crowd went nuts. They wanted to see her kick this idiot's ass. That is not to say it's in poor taste though, and there was at least 47,622 other things we could have done. But yes, as this too went off the rails, McMahon got his then lover Stratus to get on her knees and bark like a dog. I mean, it was uncomfortable anyway, but knowing what we do now, that's almost impossible. The bigger problem, of course, is that the women in general weren't being given a chance to actually be wrestlers. Triple H would not book any of his female talent like this today, and there's a reason for that. It is bottom of the barrel entertainment, and there's just no need. I suppose that's a good thing, though. We'll never see it again. Number 36, Judy Bagwell on a forklift. I don't know what somebody who's only just started watching wrestling thinks when they hear this, but yes, WCW 2000, we literally put a lady on a forklift. I mean, you can see it here. I think this was due to the fact Vince Russo had run out of pole ideas, so he just escalated the concept. Son Buff Bagwell was feuding with Chris Kanyon though, and as the latter was struggling to get a foothold in it, he kidnapped Judy. Yep. For some reason, the cops didn't get involved, but our hero had a better idea. Rather than law enforcement, why not suspend this woman in the air, and whoever frees her takes ownership? I get that sounds awful, but how else can we explain it? This all happened on the New Blood Rising pay-per-view, and honestly, if you want to see wrestling at its worst, you start there. Even David Arquette gets involved in this for some reason. I think that guy was just enjoying himself. Thankfully, Buff did save his mother, which is a shame in some sense. I want to know what the rule was if this had gone the other way. Now, I do have to admit this tickles me something pink, but also absolute shite. Number 35, Jinder Mahal wins the WWE title. Let us make this clear, there is nothing wrong with Jinder Mahal becoming the WWE champion. If you think he can run, go nuts. I mean, you gotta try new things. The only reason it became so drab, though, is because how Vince McMahon did it. Jinder literally went from losing in opening matches to being in the main events, and fans didn't know what to do. It all happened in what felt like the space of a few days. Why didn't we get behind Mahal before this and turn him into a monster? It served as arguably one of the biggest disconnects we saw between the crowd and management, and that made for really difficult TV. Audiences were cheering and booing booking as opposed to wrestlers. The whole thing had broken down. So I guess Jinder serves as a mirror to all of that, but it is unfair on him. We could have done so much better, the conversation would have been totally different. But given this period kind of ended with the McMahon family coming out and apologizing for the way they had been booking shows, yeah, that sums it up. Number 34, the Gobbledygooker. We all know this one, and yeah, it's pretty flippin' stupid. The rumor has always been that Vince McMahon wanted a Sonic or Mario type mascot because he'd seen how much success they'd had for Nintendo and Sega. Where this got lost is when we decided on a giant turkey. The Gobbledygooker was born at the 1990 Survivor Series after weeks of teasing that somebody is going to be hatching from a giant egg. I mean, more fool us when you remember that. Even the visual should have told us this was gonna suck. Poor Hector Guerrero had to play this, and it lasted no time at all. Even kids thought this was dumb, because children do have brains. No thought was put into this and it showed. Also, it is important to remember, if Vince had gotten this over, the Gobbledygooker would have still been the WWE mascot today. I mean, probably not, but I like hyperbole. Number 33, the 2015 Royal Rumble. So nothing went right here. Nothing. It was down to the fact WWE just would not listen to their audience and were desperate to push Roman Reigns. We must have forgotten that Philadelphia doesn't care about that. They will tell you. It started bad when Daniel Bryan was thrown out early, which upset the crowd. Kane and the Big Show then damped out all the other fan favorites, and yes, this was by design. It's so important to note that part, because if this was just bad booking, alright, it happens. But WWE knew that Roman winning would be booed, so they tried to make him the lesser of two evils, and that's insane. It didn't work as Philly picked up on this, so just relentlessly booed Reigns. Even when part 2 of the plan was executed, send out The Rock to help. Once again, it was too transparent and he got it as well. I mean, look at his face here. He knew he made a mistake. It also put WrestleMania into disarray because now there was extra trouble too. As it was the Rumble, it was also over 1 hour of people's time. Nobody was happy, and this was poor. Number 32, Mae Young gives birth to a hand. Let us do the test again. Would you ever show this to somebody you had feelings for that didn't watch wrestling? No, you wouldn't. It's not just the end act either, because the whole story. Not only were Mae Young and Mark Henry in a really screwed up relationship, but somehow Mark impregnated her. If you think that's possible, you need to go back to school. It's why I laugh when people go wrestling is too fake in the modern day. Yeah, sure, whatever. Of course, when Young popped something out, it was a hand, just so we could drop the joke. Somebody even said, "Give her a hand." That's right. It was all done for a pun, and it wasn't funny. And it's really screwed up. Number 31, the WrestleMania 9 finish. I mean, it's parodied more today than ever. Sums it up. It was also the opposite of what we like wrestling to be. Long-term story plans were thrown out the window because Hulk Hogan woke up and decided he should be the champion again. He was preying on the issues the WWF had too because, yeah, since Hulkamania had fallen off, Vince McMahon was looking for the answer and he couldn't find it. It's fair to say he should have given the likes of Yokozuna and Bret Hart way more time. They were doing good work. Impatience has always been a very real thing though, so after Yokozuna had defeated Bret in the main heart by cheating, here came Hulk to challenge the champion. For no reason, Mr. Fuji accepted, and after 10 seconds, Hogan dropped the leg. 1, 2, 3, he did it. Do you know how we know this was a mess too? Hogan lost the title back to Zunes at the King of the Ring a few months later and left the company again. Yeah, I checked it. That's not good. Number 30, Stacy Keibler's miscarriage. So you will not believe this, but there are 2 more of these in the list. That is so bad. It was during the now infamous New Blood Rising pay-per-view in 2000, and during a match between Stacy Keibler and Miss Hancock, Stacy got hit in the stomach. The announcers then started to ponder whether she had lost her baby. Now forget the fact that if this was real, WCW should have ensured that a pregnant lady wasn't wrestling, but there was also no depth to this. It was meant to shock you so you tuned into Nitro. I'm sorry, but no, that's not what this is about. It soon got dropped, as it always does, but this is where the ideas need to end. It shouldn't even be chatted about during a creative meeting. Nobody needs this, especially given the way wrestling handles it. Number 29, Vince Russo wins the WCW title. So in the modern day, this would be like Jonathan Breakstrom winning it. That's the lead writer of WWE Raw. And yes, you're not meant to know his name. That's the whole point. Sadly, by the time Russo had gotten to WCW, he pretty much had free reign. So after he promised us he wouldn't be a TV character, he became a TV character. All this is true. It was the year 2000, however, and Vince was a bad guy, so he had a match with Booker T for the World Championship. I mean, it's mad. It was inside a steel cage, and even though Booker whooped his ass, Goldberg turned up, speared Russo through the steel, meaning technically Vince won, as he escaped the structure first. A week later, Russo just went nah and gave up the belt, so he didn't even lose it properly. It was all done for ratings, and was another shot that told the fans, this isn't the product you used to love. Just total backwards thinking. Number 28, the Sunny Slot Bucket. This got worse recently, which is why we likely need to talk about it. It was 1996 and the Godwins decided to empty a slot bucket over Sunny's head. Sort of made sense given what else the WWF did during this era, although sure, once again in poor taste. During an episode of The Dark Side of the Ring, however, we learned that as the bucket had been left backstage, numerous wrestlers decided to deposit things into this, and I'll let you work the rest out. Personally, I don't want to know. It did mean that an unsuspecting Sonny likely got covered in something that was way too legit for wrestling. That's not cool, you can't do that. What do I know? But it feels to me like the whole industry is dependent on trust. That is a really bad way to break it. Number 27, Lance Von Erich. The Von Erich story is horrible. It got more eyes on it recently thanks to the Iron Claw movie, and yeah, that'll ruin you. It's a tragic tale. Father Fritz Von Erich had a very difficult take on this, because while I'm sure he was grieving, as a promoter he felt the need to carry on the legacy. For obvious reasons, he couldn't wait for a new child to grow up, so instead he invented a family member, Lance, Fritz's alleged nephew. Fans never really got behind this because they were never going to, but that is just a horrible way to see 80s wrestling. That's why today's approach is way better. The healthier the locker, the more we all benefit. We do not need to run people into the ground. Number 26, Vince mocks JR again. This isn't that far away from WCW's Oklahoma, so it does need to be included. Almost feels worse because it was Vince McMahon doing it. As we've seen, this was just par for the course for him. So in 2012, during a segment on Raw with Hornswoggle, Vince put on a cowboy hat and started to act act like JR, complete with Bell's palsy. It was just mean. It also tied into absolutely nothing, and the word is Ross had no clue this was going to happen. At the same time as well, McMahon was watching footage of Swoggle, who had impersonated Jim on the show the week before. I just do not think WWE would do this anymore, which shows why it sucked. Imagine you did just tune into Raw and had no idea about backstage goings-on too. You'd just be baffled, man. It was not for the greater good. Number 25, the mass transit incident. November 23rd, 1996. Eric Koulas had somehow convinced ECW he was a trained pro wrestler and got himself booked in a tag match against the Gangsters. How he did that, I will never know. Eventually, New Jack and Mustafa Saeed were in the ring with Koulas, and for whatever reason, Jack just ruined this guy. Hit him with crutches, toasters, and whatever else he could find, before he took a blade and he ran the razor, as they say. Now, all of this had been agreed beforehand because it was meant to be a squash match, but New Jack went so deep, Eric almost died. The amount of blood was reported to be horrific, and legal proceedings were taken afterwards. What really sparked things off is that after asking if he was alright and being told he was, New Jack shouted over the PA, "I don't care if this guy dies." He got so out of control that ECW's first pay-per-view, Barely Legal, was cancelled. After Paul Heyman had explained he wasn't aware of all the details, it did run in April 1997, 4 months after the intended date. Still though, this was not good, and it could have been way, way worse. Number 24, Choppy Choppy PP. Kaientai tried to chop off Val Venis' penis. Not sure we need to go on, but we will. It really was some dark stuff, because it began with Val having feelings for Kaientai's leader Yamaguchi-san's wife, who was way too young for this. That was the first part. Obviously, the bad guys didn't take kindly to this, so given that Venus was a promiscuous so-and-so, they decided to cut off his special area. We got the classic line, "I choppy chopper your pee-pee," which is also offensive, by the way. Let's not forget they kidnapped him to do this, and it served as a cliffhanger, as he hung from some sort of rope, and the screen cut to black. On next week's Raw, we learned somehow Venus had escaped. We then dropped the feud soon afterwards. Number 23, DDP is the stalker. So this one does tie into the invasion angle that we are going to talk about later, but talk about a misuse of talent. I suppose it could have been lower down in this list, but do not forget, DDP was crazy over in WCW and was so desperate to make it in the WWE, he gave up all his World Championship Wrestling money. He wanted to make the jump right now. Preceding all of this as well, we had a bunch of vignettes where clearly some stalker was going after The Undertaker and his wife, but even though they went on for weeks, nobody was sitting there going, well, I tell you who'd be good for this role, Diamond Dallas Page. That dude was like the ultimate babyface. Of course, Vince McMahon had other ideas and did pull the trigger on this, and what will really get you is that when DDP does reveal himself on Raw by pulling off a balaclava, he gets one of the best pops ever, and then he had to be the bad guy. So I am just using this as an example for how WWE treated all of the WCW talent. They never wanted to get them over properly, and that did screw the invasion. Give it a few minutes and we're going to talk about it. Number 22, Ric Flair has a heart attack. Do not fake heart attacks in wrestling. Not only is it stupid, but you're going to send some fans watching back to moments they don't want to experience. WCW, of course, did this with Ric Flair, which was twice as bad, because 1, he was relatively old, so you could believe it, and 2, Flair was always going to sell everything as best as he could, and therefore it felt real. This was also going to be another whodunit story, and people started to suggest he'd been poisoned. I mean, where does it end? It hit in December 1998, which of course is when the ratings war was going on, and this is how apparently WCW were going to get the numbers back. It also happened post the Nature Boy going off during a promo to give it that extra edge that maybe he had gone too far. There has to be a line in wrestling. This crossed it. Number 21, the TNA Ninjas. This one is here more due to the absolute lore that followed it around for years. What actually happened? Because during an episode of Impact in 2008, we saw a white van pull up behind Samoa Joe, and the men inside who were dressed like ninjas kidnapped him. That's right, we saw all of this on TV. As ever, nobody alerted the police, although as it turned out, good, because it was never talked about again, and Joe was just fine. I guess it was a joke, or maybe we dreamt it. Samoa Joe has talked about this during interviews and said he basically went on paid vacation for 3 months before he got brought back due to the lack of baby faces. Joe asked Vince Russo how they were going to pay off this angle, and he didn't know. It sounded like they didn't even bother to try. So let's just say we included this one to remind you why TNA had to revamp itself over and over again, and why they had a bunch of megastars and never actually got them to where they deserve to be. Number 20, the puppet has a gun. So I don't even know how we're going to do this, but we're knee deep in with TNA, so let's just go. This was when they still had the NWA part in their title, and Jeff Jarrett for some reason wanted to beat up a little person. In fact, he even said during a promo, he's gonna kill this guy on pay-per-view. The small questioning person was named Puppet, and after he heard this, he stormed to the ring, and yeah, he pulled a gun on Jarrett. That's right. For some reason, the crowd is not bothered by this at all. A bunch of security then rushed the ring before they realize they have no hope, when Jeff Jarrett obliterates this guy with a chair. I mean, good grief. There was another segment too when our friend was enjoying his time in a trash can. But don't worry about that if you don't want to. Just answer me this, please. What on earth was TNA trying to achieve? Number 19, John Cena beats the Nexus. Somebody beating somebody else when they shouldn't will continue to happen forever. Doesn't really matter. Eventually we'll move on. The reason this gets talked about over and over, though, is because it took multiple people down. Because for the first time in years, WWE actually had the chance to make new stars. It was a constant form of criticism from the fan base, and we all felt at SummerSlam 2010 the Nexus would beat Team WWE, and then just let them bet in, and maybe we could build some people. Nope, Cena wins lol. It was that catchphrase that heightened all this because the audience started to believe that nobody had a chance. Wade Barrett, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Dolph Ziggler. It was like all hope was lost. Edge and Chris Jericho agreed that it should have been the other way around, and even Heath Slater has said during interviews that at one point they were winning, so who the flub knows what happened. But this was the walking embodiment of how much WWE was struggling back then. They just didn't really try with anyone or anything. Number 18, the Montreal Screwjob. You could argue this was fantastic for wrestling as the WWF exploded off the back of it, as Vince McMahon became a super heel and Steve Austin whooped his ass. Was very much connected to this. The negative effect is that you shouldn't do this in wrestling, and the negative effect it had on Bret Hart, which nobody should be subjected to, especially the Hitman. For a while there, this was his entire career focus, which is beyond unfair. Bret Hart is one of the best wrestlers of all time. So it is the overall influence about why it gets in here, because in the aftermath, everybody was doing it, including WCW. Anytime they or WWE didn't have a proper way to finish a match, well, let's just do a screw job. It became so laboured and so boring after a while, and it's only really been the last few years when we stopped doing it. Thank goodness for that as well. We can't undo what happened, but we do not need to recycle it all of the time. For the love of everything, come up with a new story. Number 16, Bash at the Beach 2000. This may be in an unfair position, but it's the fallout from it. If WCW had any chance of survival, they finished it on this night. There was no coming back. It's another one that's really hard to explain because it just makes no sense. It sounds like Hulk Hogan played his creative control card, which in turn threw the main event into disarray. The eventual mutual decision was for Hulk to come out and meet Jeff Jarrett after Jarrett ran his mouth, with Jeff being so mad he just laid down. Yep, he was the champion, but screw it, just get the 1, 2, 3, sir. Like wrestling was nothing more than fake nonsense. It then goes bonkers as Vince Russo walks out later and says Hogan is a piece of shit who will never be back. Booker T then wins the title, and when Hulk Hogan found out about what Russo did, he sued WCW. What on earth? The real rubbish part is that it totally overshadowed Booker T's big victory, and that wasn't right. He'd earned that spot. And also fans were just sick of it, they stopped watching, they just wanted stories, the end. Number 15, The Ultimate Warrior in WCW. The Ultimate Warrior's comeback in WCW was just the worst the promotion had to offer. I understand why they tried this, but watching it unfold, my gosh. If you do so today, you'll be totally confused, because all of the following did happen. The Warrior would often cut promos so long, Nitro had to be rewritten as the show was happening. For some reason, the Ultimate One now had magical powers, and during their match at Halloween Havoc, Hulk Hogan tried to burn his rival and accidentally set fire to himself instead. The world did not want this to happen. The highlight, if we can call it that, is the long-discussed mirror angle on Nitro. As Hulk was getting ready, he saw the Ultimate Warrior in the mirror. Eric Bischoff was there too, and he thought Hogan had gone crazy. And that's great and all, but guess who else could see the Ultimate Warrior? We could, the audience. Therefore, it wasn't Hogan who had gone nuts, it was Eric, because he was the only one blind to this. I shall sum it up in a sentence. This was a total disaster. Number 14, Vince uses offensive language. This could cover all manner of things that were said over the years, including the threat Vince McMahon once made to The Undertaker's wife. It's out there and oddly under the radar. It is terrible. What is far more well known is the lackadaisical use of the N-word during the 2005 Survivor Series. Vince literally walks up to John Cena, who is still doing his rat gimmick, said it, and walked off. Booker T then pops in with his "he didn't just say that" line. Many people far more educated than I have weighed in on this, one of which was Devon Dudley when chatting to Maven. He wasn't with the company then, but even said he doubts he would have been able to keep his mouth shut. You don't do that. No, you don't. I guess we're falling into same patterns here, but again, that's why there was a disconnect between fans and those behind the scenes, because sometimes it felt like we were just doing things to see if we could do them. Yeah, just tell me better stories instead. Number 13, carrying on the show. Once again, there are far more important people to talk about this rather than me, but Over the Edge 1999 is a horrible watch. It was the night Owen Hart fell to his death. It's one of the most heartbreaking tragedies that could happen in any medium, but the decision to continue the pay-per-view has long been discussed. I think most agree the whole thing should have been shut down. This has been underlined over the years too, as many a wrestler has talked about the fact they had to go out there and wrestle. I can't even imagine how horrible that must have been. And of course, we as fans saw this happening in real time. It's just so awful. Really, this is the very worst, but in order to try and focus on more storyline aspects, we'll leave it there. Let's just ensure we never have to go through this again. Number 12, the Melanie Pillman interview. So much like number 11, we have tried to stay away from heartbreaking incidences that have happened outside of the ring for obvious reasons. But sometimes, sadly, the WWF brought those onto our screens. One such time was after the passing of Brian Pillman in 1997. That was a true shock to the industry. So when we got told wife Melanie was going to appear on Raw, well, that fell off. As you can guess, she looked totally broken and not somebody that should be broadcast to the world, and the back and forth questioning just wasn't on. Melanie said after they had planned the interview, and then Vince McMahon threw in some questions she wasn't ready for. It really was ghastly stuff that was presented as if it was part of a narrative. Most definitely was not. Number 11, Muhammad Hassan. This is why wrestling can't deal with sensitive subjects, or at least couldn't in 2004. With the current climate being super heightened post 9/11, Vince McMahon introduced Muhammad Hassan, a character designed to show the plight of the Arab American citizen. Now, if we had gone in that direction, it would have sparked a super interesting conversation, but this is sports entertainment, damn it. Why do that when you can just turn him bad guy and let him lean into stereotypes? It ended with what can only be described as a terrorist attack on The Undertaker during an episode of SmackDown, and look, this would have been bad anyway, but a week prior the London Underground attacks happened, so yeah, horrendous. Rightfully so, both the public and network kicked off, and instantly Hassan was written off TV when the Phenom threw him through the entrance stage. We've used the term bad taste throughout this list, because yeah, that, number 10, the Tim White story. I think it's only fair to put a trigger warning on this, but in 2005, WWE actually ran a series of vignettes where referee Tim White tried to commit suicide. I mean, it's unheard of. It began in Tim's Friendly Tap Tavern when he was being interviewed by Josh Matthews about his life post-injury. White had suffered a career-ending shoulder tear during a match. White sits there in silence as Josh hounds him with questions when he finally breaks. Look, I'm struggling. I've taken out my woes on loved ones, and I now have irritable bowel syndrome. Why do we do this? From nowhere, Tim then grabs a shotgun as we pretend he has shot himself off camera. I mean, I would call it insulting, but I don't think that's the right word. Somehow he survives, and rather than get him any help, WWE carried on this facade with rat poison, hanging, and other such things I'm sure you can imagine. Some of these happened on pay-per-view too. I take it back, I have no words. Number 9, Claire Lynch. Alright, let's get into it. The time when TNA went crazy. It started when Dixie Carter and AJ Styles were back on screen together, but this time filmed in very suggestive positions. Christopher Daniels and Kazarian then accused them of having an affair. Soon we would learn the truth, however. They were actually helping former drug addict Claire Lynch, with the twist being that Claire was pregnant. This all happened in 2012, by the way. It's not like it was 1542. Lynch then came to Impact and said all of it was true and that AJ Styles was the father, and because she hated him, she would now sit in the stands and growl during his matches. Hopefully you can see a picture of that on the screen right now. Soon, via her lawyer, Claire revealed she was not actually with child, that all of this was made up by Daniels and Kaz in order to ruin AJ Styles' reputation. Now for 1 second, I want you to remember how talented these three were in the ring, and then say it with me. Who wrote this shit? Number 8, Kurt Angle stalks Sharmell. Even Kurt Angle has said in later interviews he regrets this. Too right. Again, it wasn't his fault. He was following instructions, but man, really bad stuff. It was during a period where WWE felt like if they wanted to get the Attitude Era back, they had to out-attitude the Attitude Era without realizing life had moved on. The creative team must have thought differently, so good grief, we got a really unhinged angle starting with Kurt. Stalking somebody's wife was bad enough, but some of the language used. I'm not repeating it here because, my gosh, we crossed the line, hence why Kurt has admitted he was super uncomfortable the whole time. There were some very serious threats made. Thankfully, Booker T did win the match at Judgment Day, so it wasn't a Triple H situation, but yeah. Never watch this. You may give up on wrestling forever, and nobody would blame you. Number 7, Terry's miscarriage. Sadly, we now have to go back to this topic because WWE did it too. Now, it's only fair to say that Terry Reynolds has come out and said that she hated this, but in 1999, she did pretend she was pregnant in order to get in D'Lo Brown's head. He would run errands for her and help her during matches. Of course, the big reveal was none of this was true and Terry had made it up to get what she wanted. Beyond offensive, really. It also didn't sell one ticket or convince one extra person to tune in. Just a gross misunderstanding of what we were trying to do here. Let's leave it alone. It's very bad. Number 6, Hell in a Cell 2019. It seems crazy to have this here, but it's part of what was happening in WWE at the time. The treatment of the fans was insane. This served as a final straw as such, because during a Hell in a Cell match between Seth Rollins and The Fiend, the bout was stopped because Rollins was about to do too much damage. Even though that was the entire point of the thing, somebody is allowed to win by any means necessary. It completely ruined The Fiend and poor Seth took months to recover, if not a full year. His babyface push was switched because fans were going to boo anyway, and as for the Hell in the Cell, my gosh. I mean, at the end of this, do you know what the audience did? They jeered. Not because they were happy or not because they were sad, but because they were pissed off at the booking. I mean, it was essentially a non-ending during what was meant to be the most brutal stipulation WWE can do. So really, it just underlines what 2019 was for WWE, a mess. I mean, if you were going to get this sort of reaction at the end of a pay-per-view just because people feel like they've been ripped off, well, it's rare, it's awful, and let's hope it never happens again. Number 5, Kane and Lita. Talk about going too far, this one could be number 1. In 2004, though, WWE ran a story where essentially we insinuated that Kane had sexually assaulted and impregnated Lita. We could leave it there because nobody needs that. That's a very real issue. It should never be a story in wrestling when there's little sensitivity at all. Of course, the police weren't involved, and instead Matt Hardy, who was dating Lita, would face the Big Red Machine at SummerSlam. And if Kane won, he would get to marry Lita. Just fantastic. We then ran a miscarriage angle after Gene Snitsky hit Kane with a chair and he fell on Lita. Which begs the question, what are we doing? And imagine you use wrestling as an escape after going through something similar in your real life. I'm just gonna say this was garbage and move on. Number 4, Jeff Hardy is not ready. So this one goes back to my usual chat. If everybody involved is fine with it, okay, I suppose. It's not my place to tell people what to do, but in terms of watching as a fan, just the wrong side. It's also important to note that in the 2000s, a lot of wrestlers died suddenly. It was horrible and was a genuine problem for a while, became somewhat scary. Therefore, when the WWE on the 21st of November 2008, 48 hours before Jeff Hardy was due to go after the world title, teased on their website that something may have happened to him, man, yeah, bad, terrible. It was also reported that he'd been found unconscious in his hotel room and that he may have been rushed to the emergency room. Of course, the idea was you'd have to buy Survivor Series to find out if he was there. Once again, there's no words. That's so unnecessary, even more so because Jeff Hardy had real problems. So, we're here again. Sometimes just leave it alone. Number 3, the invasion angle. So I want to make it very clear, this ties into hopes and dreams and storylines in wrestling, but when you do get something this big and it doesn't live up to your expectations, well, it's gonna hurt for a long old time. It would be like AEW and WWE teaming up today for some kind of a super show, and the main event being me winning. You're going to be really disappointed. Why is the bald guy here? We've kind of already hinted at it during other entries in this list, but after WWF had bought WCW in March 2001, it was a case of letting everybody know we're the bigger company and we're going to whoop their ass. We also didn't have Sting, Ric Flair, Goldberg, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Eric Bischoff, all of who would come in after this story was done, and therefore it just didn't feel like anything we were expecting or hoping for. Before long as well, Steve Austin was heading up the alliance, and nobody was more WWF than that guy, and even though it did give us more Stone Cold versus The Rock matchups, that's not what we wanted. We wanted Austin Goldberg, The Rock Hogan, Sting the Undertaker. And sure, we did get one of them eventually, but as for the rest, well, you're gonna have to close your eyes and imagine it, my friends, because we were never given the thing we so desperately wanted. Number 2, Goldberg refuses to go up. So we have to talk about Vince Russo in WCW here, because this was his grand plan. We are not going to tell stories in the traditional sense anymore, and instead everything is going to be tied into what happens backstage. Therefore we'll reference scripts, the fact that wrestling is a work. That's what hardcore fans really want, tied into the drama. He was not correct. Let's not pretend that WCW wasn't already dead before this New Blood Rising pay-per-view either, but if you need something else that killed it off, well, you go to the three-way between Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner, and Goldberg. Because when Kevin was ready to give Goldberg his big old powerbomb, do you know what Bill said? No, I don't want to be hit with that move. In fact, I'm going against the script. There's no two ways about it, because do you know what the commentary team said? Oh, I can't believe it. Bill Goldberg is going against the script. Now actually, this is the most complicated thing you could do in pro wrestling, because you'll need to sit down there and try and figure out what the flub is going on. If nothing else, it gets rid of all the smoke and mirrors and beg the question, why are Kevin Nash and Scott Steiner still fighting? If we have gone off the script, surely they can just go home. I implore you to watch this today, because your brain will just explode everywhere as you continually say over and over again, why? It's just the absolute 180 of what you want from sports entertainment, and given this was one of the worst offenders, well, I thought I'd throw it in at number 2. I mean, I remember watching this when I was basically a kid, and it felt like my whole world had been crushed, so let's never do this again. Listen, I like a little bit of a sneak behind the curtain, but don't tell me outright that what I'm watching is absolute baloney. Just to continue my rant as well, you even had people like Kevin Nash backstage often saying, well, I've read the script, I know what it says I want to do, but that doesn't work for me, brother. Russo himself, after he became a weekly TV character, would also reference storylines, characters, and even said the words heels and faces. So I know recently when WWE moved to Netflix, nobody could believe that Triple H had done this. Well, trust me, he is not the first. The real head scratcher was the internet was there, or at least fan reaction could be heard, and yet we just ignored this at every turn. Not only did hardcore fans not want to pull the curtain back this much, but casual fans most definitely didn't care. They wanted stars, man. What did Vince Russo do? He went and turned Bill Goldberg heel. We'll have to save this one for another time, but there was even an occasion where Psychosis was awarded the WCW World Cruiserweight Champion without any explanation, and he lost it soon after too. I mean, I'm sure the Disco Inferno was super happy to finally get a title, but if you were going to explain this to someone, much like I'm doing now, you would have to just go, I don't know why that happened, but maybe we should just deal with it. It's like the no DQ matches that ended in a disqualification. I will shut up now, because we have one more to go. Number 1, Katie Vick. Now, people will debate what should be here, so I do want to make out that it's not really in any order, this list. It's just moments that absolutely count as being the worst. I, for one, though, would sit down and probably argue it, because never forget, what is the Katie Vick storyline about? Necrophilia. And if anybody wants anything to do with necrophilia, be it in wrestling or real life, well, we need to start throwing some people in jail. Once again, this came in the autumn of 2002 when WWE were desperate to recapture the Attitude Era, when they decided, well, we did go pretty far back then, now let's go further. Kane and Triple H were also feuding when all of a sudden the Game walked out onto Raw and said, hey Kane, I know you killed a crush of yours back in the day during a car accident, and I also know that after the fact, you defiled the corpse. You'll have to forgive me, but once again, I don't know how else to explain this. For proof, Triple H then decided to reenact this in a real funeral home, and I'm sure you've seen this segment, because there was a prop dummy in a coffin, Triple H mounts it, and, well, to use their words, he literally screwed her brains out. Thankfully, no actress was ever brought in to play Katie Vick, so I don't think I'd be able to handle this. And let's not forget the damage did to the Kane character. He was meant to be the big red machine, and now he's in some kind of depraved soap opera. Ultimately, there is no way to defend this unless, yes, you enjoy necrophilia. That's why I will put it at number 1, because when I first got into pro wrestling, I could have made a list. And do you know what would have been number 1 as the things I never wanted to see? Say it with me, my friends. Necrophilia. This really was bottom of the barrel stuff. So sure, there have been things in the past that have been more meaningful, impactful, and serious, but I'm just going to double down on the thing that I've now said 472 times. If one day you were there enjoying your wrestling and somebody walked in and asked for a complete history, you would skip over this. Otherwise, you have to talk about having sexual intercourse with the dead. And as you now have noticed, I have made sure that I have left that remark till the 90-minute point of this video, because would I ever say it in the early bit in case somebody heard? No, I wouldn't. And if you are a current wrestling promoter and you're trying to think of storylines, I, Simon Miller, the Ball Did It, will give you the greatest piece of advice: never pick necrophilia. Now, there's going to be a bunch of moments I have missed because I can't cover them all, so make sure you drop them in the comments below before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video on the screen for some positive wrestling times, which we all do need. But thank you for joining me in this epic journey. Can't believe we got to the end, but I will talk to you again soon.